Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everybody, and welcome to the first official MSA National Podcast. This is your host, Subhan from MSA National, and we are extremely humbled to have on our first episode Imam Suhaib Webb. You already know who he is, but a brief bio. Imam Suhaib Webb is the founder of an online institute, Swiss. We're going to talk more about that, focusing on developing Islamic literacy. MashaAllah, he also serves as a resident scholar at the Islamic Center at NYU and teaches a course at NYU on Islamic law and ethics. So first and foremost, I want to give a huge shout out to Imam Suhaib Webb. Jazakumullahu khair for joining us today. It really means a lot to us to join us on the first podcast for MSA National.
Wa alaikum salam, Subhan. It's my pleasure to be here, mashallah. Thanks for having me on the inaugural podcast, mashallah.
Absolutely. So we were actually discussing, when trying to plan this podcast, who should be our first person to debut. And, when your name came out, everybody was hyped, everybody was happy. And we're like, you know what, we're going to go ahead and reach out. And subhanAllah, when we reached out, your response was so fast. We got everything set up so fast. So that's awesome, mashallah. I'm sure you get so many messages and you have so many things going on. So your support toward MSA National really means a lot to all of us.
Of course, I was an MSA president in college.
Cool.
I know how difficult it is to book speakers. So there's always like a soft spot in my heart for the work that MSA does, mashallah.
That's awesome. Awesome, mashallah. Well, we have a lot of fun things that we want to talk about. And specifically talking about, of course, the state of the MSA and things like that. So I'm going to get started with that, but I may ask a couple questions outside of that too, if that's okay.
Go ahead, man. Do what you got to do.
Absolutely. So I guess let's just break the ice a little bit. While I have you, Imam Suhaib Webb, alhamdulillah, personally, I've been able to benefit a lot from you throughout the years and whatnot. So before we kind of get to the MSA, I just want to, maybe peel some salts that may be on the wounds regarding the Lakers winning the championship. From what I understand, you're a huge Boston fan, so I hope everything's okay. And then with the Dodgers winning as well. So there's 2 LA championships. Everything okay?
Where are you from?
I'm from Chicago, so you can
so
call
why
me.
Why do you even care? Why are you in this conversation?
You can call me a bandwagon.
How about those Cubs and Bears, bro? Oh, wait a minute. How about the White Sox?
Yeah.
Let's go for the University of Illinois, Champaign.
Oh man, that's my school too, right there.
Honestly speaking, I'm not really worried. To be a Celtics fan is to be a person of Iman.
Love it.
Be like, whether win, whether loss, it doesn't matter. We're the Celtics. We are the team that everybody thinks about. We are the franchise that everybody thinks about. And those of you who are Muslims, we have Muslims on our team. So there's the issue of loyalty. And then our stadium is called Jannah, bro. It's the Boston Garden, bro. So, whatever, man. It's all good.
Love it. Hey, well, you're loyal to your team. I gotta respect it. I just had to ask about that, but I think it's gonna be a good season up and coming. So I appreciate your insight.
Bears?
Yep. Let's. I think it's a good transition to the next segment because we're not going anywhere. Awesome. So, alhamdulillah, I guess also before we start talking a little bit about the state of the MSA, Imam, I think. All of us, mashallah, we have that attachment to you, on social media, and we've heard and benefited from you in lectures. And of course, we kind of skim through your bio, but mashallah, we know you have so many awesome accolades and whatnot. But I want to kind of leave it to you right now to kind of tell all the listeners from all over the globe, what's something we don't know about you? What's something we don't know about Imam Suhaib Webb that you'd like people to know?
Something that you don't know? That I can play the piano and the saxophone.
Love it. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Don't ask me if music's halal or haram. That was something that I learned prior to my conversion, but yeah.
Awesome. So I guess moving on, right? So we have a lot of students who are going to be listening to this. And I was a student a couple of years ago, and I know you're dealing with a lot of students right now, given your work at NYU. So I wanted to ask you, Imam Suhaib, and kind of this may be a lot of the crux of our conversation, but tell me a little bit about how you've personally seen the state of this pandemic, what COVID has done to students from their perspective. Kind of share with me how have you seen that shift?
I mean, I teach at NYU, so I teach a course in the fall on Islamic law and ethics,
Yeah.
um, with Professor Fayaz Jaffer, and then we teach a course together in the spring. And then I work, at the ICNYU under Imam Khalid, who's doing like incredible work there. We have, I mean, I don't know if people are aware that NYU, we have over like 3,000 Muslim students. We have a halal dining hall, a fully halal cafeteria on campus.
Wow.
Um, I think, what I've seen actually is like this really profound sense of resilience among students. So I'm still getting, I think in the last week, University of Florida, um, Boston College invites, from MSAs, yourselves, MSA National.
Yeah.
So I think one thing is just like the resilience that's there. I think the commitment to education is extremely commendable under such difficult times. People still trying to graduate and get it done so they can get out. In a lot of cases with Muslims, we understand our graduation is somewhat crucial to helping out our families, right? Finding
Yep.
jobs. So I think just like resilience and then stepping up on issues related to faith, community, and social justice, you see kind of across the board. So I just think that what I've seen has been pretty commendable. There's been, of course, challenges, right? People are
Sure.
lonely.
Yep.
Um, People miss, of course, college life comes kind of with the additive of a great social experience that's not there
Absolutely.
like it used to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
But, and I think the election has people kind of on edge as well.
Okay.
Um, but overall, I think resilience and patience is really something that's kind of sticking out across the board, but specifically with like Generation Z and millennials.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've seen that, right? I've seen a lot of, so we have a series on MSA National called Humans of MSA. And essentially that's very similar if you're familiar with, Humans of New York, where we just talk to different students across the country and then give them a prompt and they kind of reflect. So I did see a common theme that when coming into the fall semester, a lot of them have that set of optimism that despite all the challenges that they're going through, they're going to try to make it work, whether it's maintaining 6 feet apart with, potential classmates, or of course, doing Zoom sessions or hangouts with study groups and things like that. So I did see a common theme of optimism with these students. But I guess on the other hand, I've also seen, a theme, kind of what you just mentioned about loneliness and how am I going to adapt and how am I going to survive in this atmosphere. So when you said the word loneliness, that kind of stood out to me because I've, noticed a lot of students messaging me that and messaging the MSA National account that, like, how do I deal with loneliness? Now I'm stuck at home with my parents all day. I was supposed to be chilling at the university and of course studying, but, having some fun and meeting new people and things of that sort. So how would you go about, or what would you address to students who are dealing with that type of loneliness?
And I think also, and this is something that no one wants to talk about, if you have an abusive situation at home, right?
Yeah.
COVID-19 has exacerbated
Yeah.
some of the physical, emotional, even unfortunate, like sexual abuse that people have to deal with. I think that at least from a campus perspective, you want to reach out if you have a Muslim chaplain to get in contact with that Muslim chaplain and to see what resources your university offers you.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a Muslim chaplain, universities do tend to have resources, especially after COVID-19,
Yeah.
that gives young people access to therapy, to at least an intake opportunity to kind of understand and digest and learn how to talk through some of those difficulties. Because, loneliness is one of the leading causes of death in America.
Wow.
And it's a real issue. And then you deal with abuse or you deal with mistreatment at home. And then parents, I'm a parent, the stress is real, the financial stress is real. So there's a lot happening there. So I think it's important and it's certainly commendable and acceptable to look for mental health resources available through your Muslim chaplain, your MSA,
Yep.
or through the campus services.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very happy you mentioned, the word mental health. That's kind of a common theme I've been seeing a lot of MSAs post about, which is really cool because I at least didn't see this when I was at MSA, a couple of years ago. But it's really nice to see that mental health awareness is becoming so prominent in today's time. So I appreciate you also mentioning that.
Absolutely. And also sin, right? We need
Yeah.
to be careful that therapy is not used to replace sin, and sin is not used to replace therapy, right? They both kind of run hand in hand.
Yep.
But people also need to make sure like they're not engaged in disobedience, right? Dhulumat, right? Being disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does bring a sense of maybe early quick euphoria, but then it tends to be followed by like tremendous guilt. So I think another component also is to look and see how we're using. A lot of people that I've talked to, whether students or not, are starting to realize through COVID-19 how much time they waste.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
You.
and
Yeah.
it's interesting. I don't know about you. I got a call from a brother a few days ago, and he was like, "Nothing fulfills me. Like, I've I played all my games on Xbox. I've watched everything there is on Netflix, and like nothing's fulfilling." And that's a tough place to be in, man. You know what I mean? Like when things are no longer fulfilling.
Absolutely. That was actually something I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm so happy you brought it up. That yeah, students have a lot of free time, right? After they finish their studies, you can watch enough Netflix, you can watch so much of, play so much of Warzone of Call of Duty, and play so many video games, and watch so many movies, and then what happens after, right? So, kind of share with me what you suggest a student do to kind of get that balance of course, his studies or her studies, and that free time or that leisurely activity or activities that they want to do, but at the same time, still kind of flourish in personal growth and personal development and that level of fulfillment that you mentioned while still maintaining everything else. Like, what would you say to a student like that?
I think first of all, and this applies to all of us,
Yeah.
at a certain level, we need to lower the bar of expectation simply because of the realities of our situation. So if we set the bar too high, we're setting ourselves up for frustration and anger, right?
Yep.
So that's why Sayyidah Aisha said that the Prophet ﷺ, he used to command us to do what we could handle. Like he didn't demand more of us. Like he demanded what we could do.
Absolutely.
But I think it's like very important, and sometimes we do this, and religious communities are prone to this, where we set like really, really high standards that don't necessarily translate well with our available resources and abilities.
So, is it just career wise or anything?
I think in everything,
Yeah.
right? So that's something khairu umuri awsatuha, right? The Prophet said the best things are to be balanced, and I think taking into consideration like just the lack of being around people that may motivate us, like that in itself is a great loss, right? So there's like a number of things that this pandemic has forced us to kind of acclimate to that are going to probably restrict our output.
Yep.
So I'd say first, like set realistic measurable goals, and then second, have a schedule, man. Just like have a schedule. Schedules are very important, and stick to the schedule. So you want to think about having, maybe you want to memorize or learn how to read the Quran better, or memorize some chapters of the Quran. There's tons of online opportunities. So the resources are there for that, right?
Yep.
Then maybe in the professional field, like attending school, doing reasonably well in school, not turning off the Zoom screen while you're in class and falling out. That could be a goal, right? And then there
Absolutely.
should be like maybe a goal with your family. How can you improve maybe the relationships with siblings, with parents, with spouses, whoever, right? That's a goal. And then, of course, I think physical exercise is like super important, man.
Yeah, we lose that. We lose track of that, right?
I think just keeping keeping up physically, whether it's through yoga, whether it's through MMA training, whether it's like kettlebell training, whatever, right? And I think also eating clean is like pretty important, man, because it impacts how you feel. So there's like goals, right? A person can
Yep.
set. And then structure the leisure, right? The problem of modern America is that it makes leisure the goal. Whereas leisure is just like salt on the food, man. Like it's,
Yeah.
it's important, but it's not the main course. It's just like salt on the food.
I love it. You mentioned health. You mentioned, spending time with families. You mentioned such a balanced act. So kind of talk to me a little bit about like what it takes to achieve those things in terms of consistency, right? Because I feel like a lot of people have these, ambitions and these various goals that they may want to achieve during all this free time that they have. And sometimes, at least in my experience, we have these, these high ambitious goals. We want to achieve them. And then we just kind of go back to our habits of playing video games, watching TV. So kind of talk to me a little bit about that, like the consistency and the effort that it takes to actually achieve some of these goals that we set for ourselves during all this time that a lot of us have.
It's very rare to find someone that's always consistent. That's kind of like what lies on the other side of success, right?
Yep.
Is like hard work, consistency, and of course, like tawfiq from Allah. At the same time, I think it's important that everybody have a cheat day. You know what I mean?
Love it.
Everybody has. Hassan al-Basri used to say, everyone needs a tanaffus, like everyone needs moments of rest. So I think it's important that you expect inconsistency, but then you have a strategy for how to deal with it. Like most people just expect consistency and then they have no strategy how to deal with inconsistency. But if I'm thinking like, you know what, I'm a human being, I'm prone to weakness. There may be moments in my life where I'm consistent and I'm not consistent. And when I'm not consistent, maybe I need to, turn down the engines a little bit and cruise for a while. But then how do I get back into, right, having that consistency? There has to be a strategy for that.
Awesome. So essentially, it's okay to have a couple slips here and there when you're trying to achieve like a big goal. Like it's okay if you take a day to rest. It's okay if you just take a day to just kind of chillax and then get back on that grind, if you will.
And it's okay if you fail. I mean, it's very
okay
normal.
if you fail.
Right. As long as failure is not the outcome. So all that is seen. So I like to look at anything as a process, not an event. And part of the process at times is going to be that I slip and fail in my relationship with Allah. So I have tawbah. And it's not that I'm looking for it, but I know I'm a human being. Quran says we made people weak. So I like to tell people, like, always kind of frame what you're trying to do is something that like you stare at it every day. No matter where you are, you're always staring at it, even mentally in your mind, like I'm seeing where I'm trying to be. So it will remind you like, okay, I may have wandered off, right? A few blocks away or whatever, but I got to eventually get back to where I was. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. I definitely respect that. And that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So we've been talking, Imam Suhaib, about various things about, managing your time during COVID. It's okay to fail here and there. It's okay to take a day off and things like that. Looping back into the actual state of the MSA, and we were talking about like an individual level right now. So kind of looping into that MSA organizational level, like from an actual MSA student body. Some of them message us and, tell us we're not doing what we used to do in the past prior to COVID. We can't have our general body meetings like we used to, in school, in person. It's hard for us to get such and such speaker. We just don't feel that level of camaraderie with everyone. And we don't feel, that barakah like we used to, if you will. So what would you advise to these MSAs who feel like I'm failing? They feel like they're struggling. They feel like they're not leaving that, that footprint that previous presidents and, boards did in the past. What would you tell them?
I always like when people feel this way to really ask them, like, how did you fail? Like, why do you feel like you're failing? And that's not to minimize their feeling, but just so we can like have a proper assessment, because oftentimes it's not a failure. Oftentimes it's not like this massive mistake that's destroyed everything. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is we don't worship Allah for a feeling. If we worship Allah for a feeling, then we worship the feeling. But we worship Allah because He's Allah, whether it's good or bad. Like the day of Uhud, do you think people felt
Absolutely.
good? Like people like, was there like, endophorins being released in their brain on the day of Uhud? Nah, man, it's horrible. The day of Ta'if, like, it's a great day. So we don't worship the ahwal. We worship the Rabb of the ahwal. So we don't worship Allah for feelings. We worship Allah because He's the Lord of all things. So whether life is going great or life is not going great, if I am worshiping Allah as He's commanded, I am successful. And that's what it means to worship Allah as though you see Him, even though you can't see Him. I don't worship my emotions as though I can't see God. I worship Allah, right, to the point that I don't allow my emotions in most situations to overtake me and render me paralyzed.
Yep.
So I like to talk with MSAs and say, oh man, I was reading Quran and I didn't feel anything. Yeah, but you read Quran. I made dhikr, I didn't feel anything. But you made dhikr, like you remembered Allah's name. Imagine like if we didn't help our parents unless we felt good. We would never help our parents.
Yeah.
So this kind of Nasdaq-y way of looking at our relationship with God, that it's like, how things are going in my life, like faith is going to somehow run parallel with material success. No, not necessarily, right? Or that faith is indicated by, my lack thereof because my life is falling apart. No, not necessarily. Faith is indicated by a consummate commitment to do the right thing, regardless of the setting and the stage in which I'm performing on.
That effort. So it's about that effort that these student bodies are still doing, despite everything.
Yeah, and it's about being with Allah, right? If you're with Allah, Alhamdulillah. Some prophets only had one follower, man.
Wow.
Like imagine, like on their Instagram page, like prophet such and such, like one follower. And he's got like miracles, and you know what I'm saying? Like he has everything and he has one follower or 0 followers. So oftentimes we are tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see, are we working for Allah or are we working for something else? If I'm working for Allah, I'm going to try my best and put forth the best effort I can, inshallah. And whatever happens, happens.
I love it. So like to the MSAs, it's just that intention. You do the work for Allah, and whatever happens, that's He decides. But you still put in that work. You still put in that effort. So you still tell the MSAs, you still got to put in the work.
Most MSAs are underfunded, right? They're till now. I mean, there's efforts, right, to create like a strategy. You look at like Hilal, right? You look at Catholic ministries. You look at other religious communities. How not only are those young people trained by some of the best professionals in their community who come in and volunteer, right? But it also becomes like a job opportunity through that.
Yeah.
You and I know, and this is not an attack on MSA National, because MSA National is stretched, right? Is that the broader kind of support of MSA from even myself and as alum, right? Is not in a way that allows MSA to scale in a way that it should. And for young people involved in MSA to have kind of these expectations which aren't met with the support, I don't think that's fair for them, man. You know what I mean? Like I became MSA president the year after I became Muslim, man.
Wow.
And they were just like, we'll let you do it, bye. And then the brothers left. And I was like, I'm still trying to learn how to pray. Like, I don't even know how to pray yet, right? So, MSA peeps, love yourself a little, appreciate the great work that you're doing, and understand that you've been facing very difficult odds for a number of years, and just keep going. Alhamdulillah.
I love it. And it's crazy because when I was in the MSA a couple of years ago, I was their social media chair, ironically, right, for my local school. And it's crazy because back then, Instagram wasn't really a thing. It was just, we were on Facebook. It was only until recently Instagram started to pop off, if you will. But now, me doing social media for MSA National, it's crazy to see when I'm doing outreach to different MSAs for Humans of MSA, how many MSAs are on Instagram and how many MSAs are active. And I think that alone, as you mentioned, that alone is awesome, right? Because now you have a way to interact with all the students. You're doing so many programming. So I think exactly what you said, Imam Suhaib Webb, it's just that level of optimism, the fact that they have an account, the fact that they are showcasing and disseminating all that's going on. I think that's a huge win within itself.
Absolutely. And the fact that they have passion and that they care.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think about the MSA NYU the number of programs that they've had this week, the Black Muslim Initiative that's happening at NYU, the number of programs that they've had. I mean, it's like almost every night, bro.
Absolutely.
We did Jeopardy yesterday. I mean, a few
That's
weeks
awesome.
ago, they have lectures with Sheikh Aisha Pran. I mean, they're
Love
just
it.
active, right? So I would encourage people not necessarily to get down on themselves because, again, these are very, very different optics. And you may be actually more impactful without realizing it just because of how the online world works.
Love it. Love it. So transitioning right back to the student body, just the students themselves, right? We talked a lot about the MSA, but now going to that individual perspective again. A lot of students message us and they tell us, and we're not including the online world. Now we're kind of getting to real life, like what's going to happen after college. We get a lot of messages from seniors, upcoming seniors, and saying, "Hey, COVID hit. What's going to happen in my graduation? Is it going to be virtual now? I was looking forward. I grinded for these 4 years, taking all these credits, taking all these classes, and now I'm going to have a virtual graduation. Or to take it to another level, am I even going to get a job? Right? Unemployment is going so high. Like, what's going to happen in my future? Like, I've worked so hard. I'm taking this, these loans. I'm in debt. I have all this money I got to pay back. Am I even going to get a job? So, like, what would you say to these students, these subject of students, how to have them like keep that motivation, if you will?
That's tough. I mean, I can't say
Yeah,
that they'll have a job.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
can't I can't say that it's going to work out. And I think the idea is just trying to learn from what this moment really means
Mm,
and appreciating when it's over. Inshallah. I, that's a question I think that haunts us all, not just you guys, me, right? I'm 48 years old, right? In the middle of a pandemic, right? 48, you're thinking about like, having some protecting the bag, right?
yeah.
So that you can retire, get your kids in college, and then, move on and head to Jannah bi'ithnillah. Um, this is a very stressful time, even for imams, right? I know a number of imams that are worried about their jobs. Nonprofits are struggling, right? You don't have Juma anymore. Juma is where people, there was no Ramadan, right? You know that Ramadan is a time where people tend to raise their budget for the next year. So I think first is that this person wants to have a strong relationship with their family, if possible. Um, Clear communication, and I think bringing in allies to communicate sometimes to parents that, hey, the job market is not what it once was.
Yep.
Right? Parents sometimes, again, we tend to have like really over extended expectations. I'm guilty of this myself. Second thing is you want to have a strong supporting cast. You need to have a strong peer group around you that not only is going to support you, but also may be able to help you. Like maybe MSA can start to think about how do you create something that allows people like to find jobs, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I love it.
somehow organized around a way that I know in 2008, the Black church reacted to the recession, right? And actually like opened up credit unions in their churches
Yep.
to like help sustain people who were going to be hit hard by predatory loans. Like, how do we think then strategically about creating? I know, like, if you email us at NYU, like we have referrals, we can say, okay, here's the people who know about the jobs that are available. I mean, something that simple. So
Yeah.
having a supporting cast, not only for your own friendship and mental health and physical health, but even your professional growth. I think the third is staying in touch with your advisors, right, at your university, making sure that you go to career day, making sure that you take advantage of every opportunity that you have. Don't underestimate where Allah can put barakah. And then the fourth is, again, and I know this sounds somewhat kind of like, I don't want people to think that I'm dismissing them, but don't allow this moment to control you.
Mm,
Right? It's gonna come, it's gonna go. Inshallah. And perhaps there's, they say people work out better on the treadmill when the incline increases. So maybe this incline in our worldly situation is meant for us to become somewhat more introspective and like develop better habits, develop a hunger that may have not been there before.
I love it. I love it. And, just to personally reflect on what you just said, that hunger, if you will, at least for me and hopefully for many others, is health. Like back then, a couple of, 3, 4 years ago, it was so easy to go to a gym, work out, play basketball, maintain my health and things like that. But now, because of the quarantine and whatnot, I can't do that. And, my eating habits, stayed the same and they weren't the best. So it's kind of given me that opportunity or to realize, hey, I'm not getting any younger. I got to take care of my health. And, eating habits is something that I've always struggled with. And with the lack of gyms and things like that, at least in our locality, I have to step it up. So I completely agree. And I'm sure so many other students can find that one or that two things that they could use as that catalyst for, their growth. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Alhamdulillah.
It's a tough time. I don't think anyone should say that it's like it's perfect, and it's not.
Yeah, you're keeping it real. Keeping
It's
it
a
real.
tough time, and we ask a lot to make it easy for us. And especially, I mean, I talked to seniors last year who graduated, right, and they did the kind of virtual walk. I think that in hindsight, well, not hindsight, I think moving forward, we should give everyone the opportunity to walk. Like once we come out of this, like people who graduated last year and perhaps this year can still come and walk, right?
I love it. Yeah.
It's so important. And again, the Muslim community can step in, MSA can step in, and we can do like, I'm down, I'll show up. Like, let's do a graduation for all the people that graduated,
I love
right?
it. I
And
love
bring
it.
that value to them.
That is awesome. That would be amazing. Well, moving forward, Imam Suhaib Webb, I want to be cognizant of our time, and I think a common theme of everything we've been talking about, to sum it up, has been bars. MashaAllah. I think first and foremost, I myself am benefiting so much from this. So, kind of reflecting on everything that's been going on and everything we've been talking about, if you had to give, right? This is a, yeah, I'm actually excited to hear what you had to say. Like, given that everything that's happening right here, if you had to give your younger self some advice, right? What would that be? Because everything you've been sharing with us right now have, of course, has been through all your experiences and everything you've benefited. And we haven't talked much, about your studies overseas, mashallah. But you've benefited with so many people. What would you give? What advice would you give to your younger self? And I think this is something that all of us, students, alumni, etc., can all benefit, hopefully, inshallah, from as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think about that a lot, actually. Especially my son is like now almost 18, so
Wow.
I've got to talk to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my daughter is 19, and I've already had these talks with her, but she's mashallah as well. And then I have a 68, 17-month baby, old maid baby, so
Oh wow.
I basically
Subhanallah.
don't sleep in the day or the night.
Oh man, subhanallah. Time management for the next one.
Right. So what I would tell myself is this is after conversion, right? So I would say number one is be financially independent. That's one thing. It's very important to be financially independent. Sufyan al-Thawri used to say, "Al-mal silahul mu'min." That wealth, and I'm not talking about being financially opulent. I'm talking about being financially sufficient. I can make moves that I need to make. So I would encourage myself at a much younger age to think about financial management and financial independence. This is after worship and all the stuff that we normally go
Of
through.
course, of course. Yeah.
The second thing is to travel as much as I could. I would have encouraged myself to see as much of the world and engage people and not stay in the tourist places, right? But like to go into like the cut, you know,
Yeah.
and try to see as much of this earth as I could. The third thing is to listen to that little voice inside me more. So as you get older, you may experience, especially as a man, that little voice becomes slowly like a roar. Around like 44, 43 years old, it becomes like a roar. I turned that voice off probably for like 43 years.
Wow.
So I wish that, I had listened to that side of me more than say the machismo side or the hard side or, whatever the gusto side of it. I
Yeah.
wish I had listened to that. And the last, man, is learn how to love and value yourself. Because what I see a lot of times, and I see this in my own life, is we go into relationships or friendships, and if we don't know how to truly, in a healthy way, I'm not talking about narcissism or hubris, but I need to love myself in such a way that I'm not going to sacrifice myself for anybody. Like, meaning I'm going to lose myself trying to impress others or trying to fit in or trying to make something work. Because what happens is you just get ran over.
Love it.
So understanding my own value and what makes me feel valued, and then my negotiables and my non-negotiables. Those things I think are like the crux, right? After worship and everything and faith
Yeah. Yeah.
is your emotional intelligence, is your financial intelligence, is your self-awareness, and then your interest in like generally seeing others and kind of broadening how you look at the world. Because when you travel, you're not just reading a book, like you're actually living the novel,
Yeah.
right? And you're engaging in different people and you're having conversations. And this is going to help inform you as a person as you get older.
That was awesome. Subhanallah. You know what so many things from what you just said stood out. I guess one question that I have after hearing all that is regarding the word roar, right? A little bit. So is that word coming, and you don't have to get to the specifics, but is that coming from like pursuing your dreams, pursuing that thing that may be a risk, but you got to go for it type of thing? Or is that something completely different?
I think it's about being wise and emotionally present. I think that's what that roar is. That roar doesn't tell you to stop, right? That's a little different.
Got it.
It may tell you to stop. Sometimes it may say, "Hey, enough is enough." But I think that roar tends to become much more amplified as our physical abilities become less,
Got
especially
it.
as men. I can't talk about women, but as men. So when I'm young, right, when I'm younger, um, my physical ability, just the sheer presence of the hormones in my body, are amplifying what I may feel I have the physical ability to do. But as we get older, right, that begins to wane. And then we start to become somewhat, hopefully, more emotionally intelligent. Mutanabbi is a great Arabic poet. He kind of encapsulates this. He said, "Ar-ra'yu qabla shuja'a shuja'ani," right? To be thoughtful before you're brave is two braveries.
Wow.
So, like, sometimes we're just brave without thinking, right?
Got
But we
it.
want to be able to think, not to the point that we extinguish or mute. That roar shouldn't mute our efforts, but it should kind of help us think in a more deeper way, in a much more kind of strategic way, and a much more caring way. Right? We should learn to care more as we get older.
MashaAllah. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah. I think that that was so beneficial for myself, and I know all the viewers will find those gems very beneficial. So Imam Suhaib Webb, we mentioned this very early on when I kind of was giving a brief introduction, but given the fact that we talked about how students have free time and they should try to be consistent with various things, and some of them are lonely and some of them want to make a mark, and do things. I want to hear from you a little bit about this initiative that you started, and that's Swiss. I'm seeing that everywhere in my social media, mashallah. If you're not following Imam Suhaib Webb on Instagram, you got to make sure you do so. And mashallah, I see you, of course, sharing that all the time. And it really seems like a resource that a lot of students can benefit from while studying, while doing their things, while still being, a teenager or a student in college, but it can still have that level of, growth. So kind of talk to me a little bit about Swiss and how a student can benefit from that.
So Swiss actually is an online on-demand educational experience. Has over now 500 hours of content in different courses. What I noticed, my background, actually, my bachelor's degree was in education. So I noticed that, I experienced it myself, and then coming back after studying overseas and noticed that, like, it's very difficult to kind of find a system of teaching, right? You can go on YouTube, you watch this lecture, or we see, a few clips here and there on Instagram, but is there like a pedagogical like framework for me, say anybody who's not like wanting to be in a religious vocation, but is looking for functional religious literacy? Is there something out there? So what we started is Swiss we're still in the beta launch actually, because we're still
Wow.
trying to work through some things. We have an app hopefully that will be out, and then we'll launch fully. But basically teaching some of the foundational sciences, religious sciences that everybody needs to know to function. And what does function mean? Number one is I can deal with my own doubts. Right? I can scaffold my own faith. Number two is that I can defend Islam when needed, say at work, right? Say at school, whether it's MSA, whether it's in a professional setting. And then number two is that it enhances my worship. So when I learn, I start to feel more involved and passionate about worship. And then number three is we need to think about not only generational wealth, we also have to think about generational spirituality. So how do I then continue this amongst my children? So that's kind of the flow of Swiss. It has like a full curriculum. There's like quizzes if people want to opt into it. There's exams, assignments, oral things, or people can just binge the norm, man. And
Love
it's
it.
only $10 a month per household. So we felt it should be accessible and affordable.
Yeah, and you said household, so it's not only for students, alumni, parents, anybody. It's for everybody,
Yeah, I
essentially.
mean, one of our most successful programs, we run a youth program that has around 500 kids from all over the world. We do 3 or 4 classes for them. We're going to start some programming more for the university age kind of setting
Yeah.
soon. And we plan to actually develop a curriculum that is kind of based on the needs of each demographic. But right now, we have a really success. We have like a Twitch account, man. We play video games. We're going
No way. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Swiss Suhaib Webb Institute, Suhaib Webb at Twitch. We do movie nights, especially during COVID-19. We weren't going to launch it until this year,
Yeah.
but when COVID hit, we just popped it like boom. Let's just be there to serve the people.
Love it.
And we have like around 500 kids, man, from all demographics.
Alhamdulillah.
We have around 280 people on scholarships as well.
Wow, mashallah.
We have like a sister from Gujarat who's a convert, man. She's a Hindu convert from Gujarat under Modi who accepted Islam.
Wow.
So
Subhanallah.
a lot of opportunities for people if they're interested. Especially the scholarship piece. We're happy to plug them in.
So how would if a student listening to this wants to enroll, where should he or she go?
Just go to sohaibweb.com. I think for college students, one of the things that they like is like I actually meet with them.
Yeah.
So there's like office. So we create like office hours, right?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It's booked. It's booked. Like it's pretty packed. But then we also do live courses. Like tonight, I have a tafsir with our students at 11. We also do a number of courses free for the community on my Facebook page and the Swiss Facebook page. But one of the things that college students like is like the office hours, where like as a few students, I have one who's like memorizing Quran from the Bay Area, a young woman in Canada who's an MSA student is memorizing the Quran, but then also you don't have to be memorizing the Quran. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then they'll just hit up and be like, yo, like I'm having some doubts on this issue, or like I heard this from a professor. Had a graduate student reach out to me a few days ago who has a professor who believes that Sharia is fictitious, right? So that's something that college students really appreciate.
I love it. I love it. Well, if anyone's listening, suhaibweb.com. Learn more about Swiss. It's a great, great, great initiative, mashallah. Imam Suhaib Webb, before we conclude, I thought of this on the spot, but, I was a big fan of a show called Family Feud growing up. And if you ever watch the show at the end, they have something called like Fast Money or something like that, where they just ask like 5 questions and you pretty much give a quick answer. So I just got 5 questions, so I'm going to do it like a rapid fire, if you will. Just a couple questions. You just give a quick answer, and I think it'll be like, some fun for myself, of course, and I'm sure the viewers as well. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Are you Steve Harvey? Is that?
I'm not Steve Harvey. I'm not on that level, but hey, let's get it. Favorite NBA player?
Of all time?
You can give me both, old time and current.
Oh man. Favorite NBA player of all time? It's probably someone no one even knows, man. Was Dominique Wilkins, man, the Human Highlight film.
Of course, of
Yeah,
course.
that was like since I was a kid. I learned how to dunk watching him, so I feel like I owe him, something. And then current favorite NBA player? Oh, you already know, man, Jason Tatum, dude.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Big future ahead for him. All right, number 2. Top skill.
Mashallah, mashallah. Don't make hasad on my dude.
Mashallah, mashallah, mashallah.
You're making nazar on Jason Tatum, bro.
Nah, he's gonna he already broke out. Inshallah, he's only gonna continue to do great stuff. Inshallah. Number 2, what's a top skill you'd advise anyone to learn?
Top skill? What do you mean by skill?
A skill set. What's a skill set you found beneficial that you would advise anyone to learn that you're grateful that you learned?
I think listening is very important, because when you listen and you learn how to listen well, it opens up every door for you. That's why the Sahaba says, Sami'na wa ta'na, like we hear. And we live in an age now where nobody wants to listen. Everybody wants to talk. So being a good listener also tells you where people are coming from. Like if you listen to them well enough, you can hear past their voices. You know what I mean? So it's important to learn how to be silent and listen.
I love it. Wow. Subhanallah. All right. Number 3. Where is your favorite place that you've ever traveled to or visited?
Outside of like the holy places?
Sure. So outside from Medina and Mecca, what's your favorite place you visited?
Man, one time I did the dogs in Norway, man.
Wow.
I went to the Northern Lights. I took the sleds, man.
Oh, the sleds with the dogs and the snow and everything?
Yeah. And I had like the special space suit on. I was at the end of the dunya, man. Like literally, it was like I was in like the show Vikings.
Wow.
It was crazy. And everybody kept speaking Norwegian to me. And I was like, I'm too fat to be Norwegian, man. Look at me, man. I'm American. Look, I look like I be throwing down like mad nons for days.
Did you see the lights?
Yeah, and then I ate whale.
Wow.
Yes, don't do that. But mashallah. But yeah, I saw the lights, man. It was surreal, bro.
Wow, subhanallah.
So I would say Norway, and then people may laugh, man. Maine. I'm telling you, man. Maine.
Oh snap! I had a friend say he wants to go to vacation during Thanksgiving break to Maine, and I was like, Maine? Well, what's in Maine? And then he showed me some pictures. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to go in the winter, but Maine is incredible, man. Mashallah.
Alrighty, so we got Maine and Norway. Alhamdulillah.
Because you have to keep in mind, like I lived in California, so since I lived there, that's like it's all just as Cali.
True. Yeah, you've seen Cali.
People there, by the way, that are going through these fires. And then I lived in the South. I lived in Detroit. I lived in Cairo. I lived in New York and DC and Boston. So those places I know, like that's where I lived.
Got it. Yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay. Cool. Alhamdulillah. All right. So last question of the day, Imam Suhaib Webb, what is your go-to activity when you need a break during the pandemic?
I hang out with my wife, man. My wife and my baby. I mean, I try to. I think it's very important that we make points in our life that we find relief. We have to be very careful what those are. So, like I noticed with my daughter, 16th month, 17th month now, is that the screen became kind of like an emotional crux for her. So I tried to replace it with books.
Love it.
So I think like, and I'm not like a mean dad or nothing, so nobody freak out. But like, I think also I started thinking about me, what is it that like I turn to when I play sometimes video games with Imam Mark Manley, which is like crazy. Yeah, we do that. But I generally try to make sure that it's things that are going to bring value to myself and the people around me. So I try to find great happiness in being with my wife and my family. And that, I know that sounds weird, but if you think about how the capital kind of based economy is, it actually allows us to excuse being present for our family so we can be present for, say, Netflix and
yeah.
Like I don't have a problem. I watch Bly Manor, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna get down.
Yep.
But like not to the point where I worry like it becomes like a source of like euphoria for me. I don't want that. I want that with my child. I want that with my wife. I want that with my family, with God, with Quran, with So, and that's a battle, man. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I got my little slips here and there, but largely I try to spend time with my family.
I love it. I love it. Keeping those priorities in check. Well, alhamdulillah, Imam Suhaib Webb. I think this was a great, great, great time spending time with you today. Alhamdulillah. Benefiting, as I'm sure all the listeners will as well. As we conclude, I want to just give you the last couple words. If you have any parting advice or any closing words as we end this podcast episode.
Hey, being in MSA is like really an incredible time, and MSA National has a great history. I would just encourage everyone to try to slow down, not yourself, but like slow down the world around you. Like be able to kind of pull back and slow it down. So that way you don't get too hurt or too happy with anything, right? But you're able to see it, try to see. That's why it's called tadabbur, right? Tadabbur means to go all the way to the back of something, look behind it. That's why dubur is the back. So, enjoy this moment. Enjoy it. You know what I mean? Enjoy it. Like it's a great time, and try to see it in a little bit of a slower pace. That will be my kind of parting.
Yeah. Drop the mic. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, Imam Suhaib Webb, for all that you do. Everybody, in the description, you're going to see Imam Suhaib Webb's handle, his website at Checkout Swiss, and any other beneficial information. Let us know in the comments who you want us to interview next. But Jazakumullahu khair, Imam Suhaib Webb, for joining.
Thank you, sir.
Alhamdulillah.